Hello my viewers, and welcome back to my channel. Subscribe, like, and don't forget to share your comments in the comment section down below. With that said, let's get into today's video. Now in today's video, we tackle the often contentious and misunderstood topic of palm color privilege. This is not a new topic. We always talk about this, but in this candid and enlightening discussion, we hear this from palm color individuals themselves who bravely confront the reality of their own privilege and acknowledge the existence of palm color privilege in society. Through personal anecdotes and shared experiences, they shed light on how palm color privilege manifests in their lives and benefits not only themselves but also their peers. So to those palm color people who always say WP does not exist, I bet this video is for you. So maybe, and just maybe, you will get it when you hear it from people who look like you. Let's get into the videos, and when I get back, I share my 2 cents on this.
And this is just your friendly reminder that if you actually thought privilege exists, then mixed people would be clinging on to the side like their life depended on it.
This video is for anyone who believes that privilege doesn't exist. I'm not sure that one video can change someone's mind, so my goal here is simply to plant some seeds. I'm in my seed planting era, if you will, because if I can use this account and the platform that I have to cause one person to go, that's some good points, then it's worth it. So Lauren, I hope you and anyone else that thinks like you stays and listens. Privilege is being able to say, I'm not really a political person, which is something that I hear people often. Being able to say that is an absolute privilege that Black, Indigenous, other people of color, disabled, and other marginalized communities simply do not have. Privilege is being able to walk into any cosmetic section and finding your shade of foundation. Privilege is not having, but should be having, difficult conversations with your young children about race and how there are people in the world who will hate them solely because they have a little bit more melanin in their skin. Privilege is growing up and being able to own dolls that look like you, seeing Disney princesses that look like you. And yes, that has started to shift in recent years, but there are Black people today that can testify that when they were growing up, there was only one type of doll that looked like them, if there was any at all. And it wasn't even until 2009, I was in college at the time, that we got our first Black Disney princess, and she was a frog for most of the movie. Just being able to walk into any hair salon and knowing without a shadow of a doubt you're going to be able to find a stylist who is competent in how to cut and style your texture of hair. Privilege is getting pulled over by a cop and the only thing that you're nervous about is getting a speeding ticket instead of worrying that you might say or do something that will get. Privilege is not being followed closely around in a store because employees have assumed based on the color of your skin that you might steal something. Privilege is being given the benefit of the doubt in a lot of different situations solely just because you look like you're a nice person. Privilege is being able to travel freely to pretty much anywhere in the world and being welcomed by the people that live. Interviewing for a job and not having to worry about your natural hair or if the interviewer has already written you off just because of the color of your skin. And that's not even close to being a complete list. Let me end with this. If you could choose to be Black, would you? That's kind of a rhetorical question because any person that answers yes is a liar. Because you see and are fully aware of how Black people are historically and presently treated in this country and globally by people and the systems that we uphold. And you know damn well you wouldn't choose that for yourself. That privilege. And it is absolutely sinister that in the year 2023, like you, who are acting completely aloof to having said privilege. And that is privilege.
I've always known privilege exists, and I've always known that I've benefited from it just by the sheer dumb luck of being born into it. I didn't really understand it until one night a few years ago. I had gotten my oil changed that day, and I guess they turned off my battery or something like that. Anyway, my automatic lights didn't come on like I was used to them doing. I worked late that night, and as I was heading home, I didn't realize that my lights weren't on, and I was still in a pretty well-lit area, so I couldn't tell yet. And I was pulled over. The actual traffic stop was a non-event. I think he just talked to me for a minute, made sure I wasn't drunk, gave me a warning. Maybe he didn't even give me a warning. He just let me go. But afterward, I texted my husband, voice text, obviously, and also a really good friend of mine. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I just got pulled over by the cops. Like, what an inconvenience. My friend immediately called me, and I could hear the panic in her voice. She was like, are you okay? Do you need someone to come there? Is everything all right? So my friend is Black. She's around my age, and she has a husband around my husband's age who is also Black, and she has 2 Black sons that are around my kids' ages. My kids are in 2nd and 5th grades. We've known each other since college. She has more advanced degrees than I do and a successful professional career. She's a smart and capable woman. And the fear in her voice was palpable. When I heard the panic in her voice, it just hit me. I had this realization that I will never truly know what it feels like to be Black in America. Because when I get pulled over, I'm annoyed, right? Like, it's taking up my time. I don't want to pay for a ticket. It's an annoyance. It's not a situation where I fear for my life. When my husband calls me and says he's getting pulled over, again, I'm annoyed. Like, don't get a ticket. I'm not afraid he's not going to come home at all. I'm thinking about my friend, and her family's so similar to mine, and she's never going to know peace while her Black husband and Black sons are out moving around in the world. And think about all the fears I have about my kids and for my kids. Like, I'm worried they're going to get to school, just because of school, let alone because of the color of their skin. I just can't imagine how helpless my friend must feel. It doesn't matter how hard she tries, how much education she has, how hard she works. It's simply dangerous to be Black in America. And the very fact that I can't even fathom how she must feel is privilege. And I will never understand why that is so impossible for some people to acknowledge. I'll never understand why the solution to this is to make sure that schools and colleges are shrouding the nation's history of system, just not teaching it in schools because it makes people feel uncomfortable. I'll also never understand why some people feel superior over another race simply because, like me, they had the sheer dumb luck to be born into a body with one. We need to feel comfortable with this. We need to be reminded about our past, and we need to check our privilege. I can accept that the folks who came before me who look like me did horrifying things. It's our job to make sure those things don't continue to happen.
So the first time I heard the term privilege, it was 2014, and I was deployed to Bagram, Afghanistan. Yes, I'm a little bit embarrassed that I hadn't heard it before then, but it shows you my bubble. So my background is I grew up in a religious cult, the Children of God, mostly in Brazil, but kind of all over Asia and Latin America. So Brazil and Mexico is where I spent a lot of my childhood. And then when I was 15, I was excommunicated from the cult, moved to the US, put myself through high school and college, commissioned into the Army. Definitely worked very, 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 very hard. So in 2014, there we are in our Tactical Operations Center, the term privilege is being discussed. And I just hear someone call over to me from across the room, "Come on, Captain Mestenek, get over here." So I walk over to the conversation, and this guy, blue-eyed, blonde Army guy, says to me, "You of all people, ma'am, are the one that can prove that privilege is not real because you worked for everything you had." And when you hear a new term for something that you've always experienced, but you didn't know there was a word for it, like, obviously it's a sad concept that this exists in our world, but it just made me very excited to have a word for it. And I just looked at him and I said, "No, I'm sorry. Like, I've worked really, really hard in my life, but just right now off the top of my head, I can give you 10 examples of why my life was easier because I was a pretty little girl when I was dropped off in America with nothing. People gave me the benefit of the doubt. People helped me. Professors assumed that I wanted to be a great student, even though I was indigent, right? Just all throughout my life. Like, I grew up in poverty. I grew up with terrible situations, but I was never discriminated against for the color of my skin. And that, of course, started me out on a journey of learning, like, not just what is privilege, but how do we dismantle it, give it back. I'm definitely still trying to educate myself on all of this, but yeah, that was, an interesting moment for me to actually realize in a conscious way what I had realized all along was that I got lucky through no privilege of my own. I was born to a teenager in the Philippines, but I had an American passport, and the little brown girl who was also born to a teenager right next to me, she didn't have that same opportunity to have the advantages that I had just because of my skin.
I got pulled over a while back for a traffic violation. And the officer came up to my window. I put it down. He said, "License and registration, please." And my wallet had fallen off the seat onto the floor. And I reached over like this to grab it. And he said, "Don't lean over. Don't reach to the floor." And I did it again. I said, "No, it's my wallet's under here." And before I even got the words out, he yelled, "Do not reach for the floor." And then I got it. I understood what was going on, and I said, "I'm sorry." And then he asked me to step out of the car, and I did. And then he bent down, turned his back to me, bent down, and got my wallet from the floor. And his back was turned to me, and he was crouched down. I didn't think anything of it at the time. But now I realize that, he did me when I reached for the floor. And me again when I defied him and did it again. And then he turned his back on me. And it occurs to me that when I get pulled over, my only thought is I'm going to have to go to traffic court. It's going to cost me money, and that it's an inconvenience for me. It's never, this could be the last moment of my life, ever. And that is privilege. I have it easy like that. Doesn't mean I've had it easy in all the areas of my life. Doesn't mean I haven't had challenges. It doesn't mean that I haven't had hard times. But it means that I just haven't had that. So, and that privilege.
Now, WP is a pervasive and often invisible force that affords certain advantages and opportunities to individuals solely based on their race. Those who benefit from WP may not always be aware of its existence or its impact on others, but its effects are profound and far-reaching. For many palm color individuals, WP can manifest in subtle yet significant ways in their everyday lives. It means being able to move throughout the world without fear of discrimination or harassment based on race. It means having greater access to quality education, employment, and opportunities in healthcare. It means being afforded the benefit of the doubt by authorities or being less likely to experience negative stereotypes or biases in various social contexts. WP often operates in conjunction with other forms of privilege such as class, gender, or further amplifying its impact. Now, for example, a palm color person from a privileged background may have even greater access to resources and opportunities than a person from a marginalized group background, person of color, or a black person. The benefits of WP come at the expense of other racial and ethnic groups. The systemic inequalities and injustices perpetuated by WP contribute to the marginalization, discrimination, and oppression experienced by people of color and black people. Now, this manifests in various ways, including disparities in income, wealth, housing, education, healthcare, and criminal justice outcomes. WP is not just about attitudes or behaviors. It is deeply embedded in the structures and institutions of society. It is reinforced by cultural norms, media representations, and political systems that prioritize and uphold the interests of palm color people over those people of color or black people. Now, for those who still say it doesn't, these are the following ways you can know that it really does. WP often manifests in greater access to quality education and educational opportunities. Palm color students are more likely to attend well-funded schools with experienced teachers and resources, while students of color and black students are disproportionately represented in under-resourced and underfunded schools. Now, this disparity in education perpetuates cycles of inequality and limits opportunities for advancement for marginalized communities. WP also influences employment and economic opportunities. Palm-colored job applicants are more likely to be hired and promoted than equally qualified applicants of color and black people. And palm-colored individuals generally earn higher wages and accumulate more wealth over their lifetimes. This economic advantage entrenches disparities in wealth and perpetuates cycles of poverty in communities of color and black communities. Now, WP contributes to housing and neighborhood segregation, with palm color individuals more likely to live in affluent, predominantly palm color neighborhoods with access to resources and amenities. Communities of color and black people, on the other hand, often face discriminatory housing practices, redlining, and lack of access to affordable housing, leading to residential segregation and limited opportunities for social and economic mobility. WP is evident in the criminal justice system, where palm color individuals are more likely to receive lenient treatment and favorable outcomes compared to black people or people of color. The disparity is evident in arrest rates, sentencing outcomes, and experiences of police brutality. Black and brown individuals are disproportionately targeted and marginalized within criminal justice system, leading to higher rates of and systemic injustices. WP also influences access to healthcare and health outcomes. Palm color individuals are more likely to have health insurance access to quality health providers and positive health outcomes compared to people of color and Black people. Communities of color face barriers to accessing healthcare services, disparities in healthcare quality, and higher rates of chronic illnesses and mortality. WP has its roots in the historical legacies of colonialism and slavery, which systematically exploited and oppressed marginalized groups for economic gain. Now, the wealth and power amassed through these systems laid the foundation for modern racial hierarchies and inequalities, with palm color people benefiting from the exploitation of Black and indigenous people. The Jim Crow era and legal segregation in the United States further entrenched palm color privilege by enshrining racial discrimination and segregation into law. Palm color individuals enjoyed access to superior education, employment opportunities, housing, and public accommodations, while Black individuals faced systemic discrimination and violence, perpetuating cycles of poverty and marginalization. Still do, actually. Now, while the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s led to legal victories and advancements in racial equality, the legacy of WP persisted. Segregation may have been outlawed, but systemic racism and discrimination continued to shape access to education, employment, housing, and healthcare, contributing to persistent disparities and inequalities. In contemporary society, the myth of colorblindness has perpetuated the illusion of equality while masking the ongoing impacts of WP. So the belief that race no longer matters and that everyone is treated equally ignores the structural barriers and systemic inequalities that continue to disadvantage Black people and people of color. WP is also reinforced through implicit bias and microaggressions, which perpetuate harmful stereotypes and discriminatory attitudes towards Black people and people of color. Now, these subtle forms of racism manifest in everyday interactions, workplace dynamics, media representations, and institutional practices, further marginalizing and disempowering marginalized communities. We have come to the end of the video, but what do you have to say? Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video.